Howdy, it's Jace. One of the main questions I'm asked around addiction, especially the area of sex addiction, is do I have to abstain from sexual behavior in order to get sober and healthy? The short answer is yeah, for a little bit. Uh, though not all sexual behavior is compulsive, it's not all unhealthy. It certainly isn't all addictive. However, all of that is being interpreted in the brain in a lot of the same areas, and it engages a lot of the same neural pathways. For that reason, and because addiction lives in the brain. Yes, its symptoms live externally in our actions and our thoughts and behaviors, but really the root of addiction is in the brain. So it's essential, I was going to say important, but it really is essential to work on the healing of the brain in order to have true sobriety and a full life. In order to do that, there needs to be a break in activity so that your brain can begin the healing process and start creating new pathways for your activity to fall into so that it can be in a safe and healthy, non-addictive way. Sex addiction is super confusing because sex is a natural and healthy part of our humanity. Just like eating is, and so many other things that on one level are natural and healthy, and then taken to the extreme and becoming compulsive and dependent upon, throw us into that addiction category. So the reason that that's extra confusing with sex is because really sex itself doesn't have to do with the addiction specifically. I have other videos on that. You can read a lot about that if you want some more info. But as far as taking a break, yes, it's going to be really, really hard to recover and to be sober from sexual acting out if you don't have a period of abstinence from all sexual behavior. That means sexual behavior with yourself, masturbation, fantasy, obsession, objectification. That means sexual behavior with others, whether that is in a monogamous relationship with multiple partners, with strangers, with no strings attached sex, with sex workers, cyber sex, the apps, any of that stuff. And then of course, pornography as well. All of those things play into the same areas within the brain, and you can't change them if you're still utilizing those neural pathways regularly or at all. Kind of the idea, if you will, is to transition what pathways your brain is using. The brain is efficient. I was going to say lazy. The brain is efficient. It will seek out any shortcut it can, and it will create shortcuts as well. That way we reserve energy for things like survival, which is the brain's main purpose, is to keep you alive. So it creates shortcuts any and everywhere it can. That's why our habits are so important, because that's how it reserves energy for other functions. So those neural pathways that we're talking about that have been created and wired through your sexual acting out are shortcuts that the brain has taken. They have rewards attached to them. So when they are used, the brain gets a thumbs up through things like dopamine and those pleasure chemicals. And so it's like, yeah, this is a great thing. It will keep taking those if it has the option. What we do in recovery and the healing of the brain is create new pathways that then will become the shortcut over time, so that the brain favors the healthy pathway over the compulsive addictive one. For that to happen, this well-worn pathway has to get some overgrowth happening. It has to get covered up by the weeds and the foliage and all of that so that the track isn't there anymore. When that becomes harder to take because you're not using it and you're using it in another one, then the brain in time will go, cool, this is the shortcut, you got it. It's not a moral thing that's going on. It's not a willpower thing that's going on. This is all just stuff going on in the brain. And we know what's happening. There's plenty of addiction science now that we know what's going on in the brain with this stuff. We know how sexual behavior, even if that's just visual, like pornography or fantasy or objectification, we know what's going on there. And that's great because that means that we're able to make adjustments and hack it, if you will. But that does take time. How much time? Well, the general consensus around that is at least 90 days. Please hear the at least part of that sentence. They have done a lot of research and it shows that in general, this will vary from person to person and depending on your situation and length of use and everything, but 90 days is the general consensus for when the brain begins to heal and shift. So really anything before that, you're kind of in a resting period, you're in a break period that is allowing the brain to begin to heal. So really 90 days is the minimum. Any time past that is going to help you immensely. I am not someone who thinks to recover from sex addiction, you can never have sex again or never have certain kinds of sex. I think the idea with true sobriety and this boldly satisfying life we talk about is that you have the options to do anything you want. Now, what you want will change. That's going to shift. The healthier you become, the healthier your desires will become as well. And you want things that feed you, that fuel you in positive ways. But it doesn't mean no sex. It doesn't mean plain, boring, vanilla sex forever, though there's benefit in that too. So it just means temporarily putting a break on all of that. Believe me, I know that is not an easy thing to do. If you are in active addiction around sex right now, that might sound like an impossible thing to do. I assure you it's not. It is tough, especially at first. It becomes easier, just like anything. The longer you do it, the easier it becomes. The brain is really adaptive. So when it gets into that mode, it goes, oh, this is what we're doing now. Okay, cool. It really helps to have support around that, whether that's a group, a therapist, a coach, an accountability partner, someone that is going to help you through those times of like teeth clenching, white knuckling, like, oh, I want to do sexual stuff so bad. You're going to need a support team around you for that. It can't be done alone. Just none of this stuff can be done alone. I don't care who you are, how strong you think you are, how powerful you think you are, how autonomous and independent. Believe me, I'm all of those things too. I was probably overly independent actually, but we all need a team around us. Just we're biologically designed to work that way. And this stuff is so big and so deep, we just can't handle it alone. We're talking about healing the brain. That takes time, that takes support, it takes a lot of patience, and it's going to take determination as well. Your brain's going to freak out. Your limbic system will freak out once that behavior isn't present anymore. That has to do with how your sexual behavior has now been tied to survival. And I won't get too much into the science in this video, but it will freak out. You got to be ready for that. It's going to be hard. You got to be ready for that too. I hear that from people all the time, like, oh, I was doing well in my sobriety, but it just was so hard. And I'm like, well, yeah, you're turning like a lifetime of behavior into something new. You're healing your brain. Yeah, it's going to be hard. Think about getting in a terrible accident and losing your ability to walk and then having to come back from that. It takes small exercises, little effort, what feels like little wins, and gradually you are able to walk again. And in time, you're able to run again. And then in time, you're doing Ironman marathon type stuff and all of those things. But it takes time. It's going to be hard. It's going to suck. I'm not going to pretend it's not. There will be times, but it's going to be so much better. Being stuck in that compulsive state where you're controlled by these urges, by these thoughts, these behaviors, pushed outside of your realm of values, all of that stuff's hard. That stuff sucks. and it's for a lifetime, and it's progressive. So yes, 90 days might seem like a long time to be without sexual behavior. If you have a partner, that might seem like a really long time for your partner as well, but believe me, it is worth it. And I don't think true, deep sobriety and recovery is possible without it. It's going to be a lot harder and take a lot longer if you do not give your brain a break. And I'm not actually convinced it's possible without a period of abstinence entirely. Not the best news for some people. However, think of it, you can struggle in this slow, dull pain that kills you over time. Or, it's like ripping the Band-Aid off. It's just short and it sucks and it hurts, but it's quick, relatively speaking, 2 years or a lifetime. So if you want a boost in your recovery from sex addiction, a period of abstinence beginning at 90 days, at least 90 days, is going to be one of the most powerful things you do for yourself. It will be one of the strongest parts of foundation for recovery from this stuff. There you go. That's maybe not your favorite bit of news, but it's the truth. And it wasn't my favorite thing, but I got through it. And so can you. And I wasn't alone, and neither are you. Build a strong support team around you, whatever that looks like: friends, family, recovery group, a therapist, a coach, accountability partner. Some folks do it with a church group. Whatever works for you, build your team and get going, or get stopping. Get going on a period of abstinence if you're really ready for deep recovery and deep sobriety with sex addiction. If you have any interest in me being part of your team, you can find out ways to work with me on jacedowney.com. There's also free resources there, lots of great info around not just sex addiction, but addiction in general. Until I see you next time, don't settle for sober. It's just the beginning.